So
Reginald and I will hang out
I'm gonna
here.
let everyone have a seat. So as you all know, tonight we had presentations from City County Planning, City Community Development, and our City Engineering and Environmental Services departments. And we're doing things a little different tonight. I look forward to your feedback. We'll see. 'Cause everyone offers such beautiful feedback to us, and we love reading it every single time. So what we're going to do tonight, since we have so many different presenters, we've given them your questions, and we have 15 minutes for our Q&A session. So each group will have 5 minutes. They're going to read your questions, and they're going to answer your questions, as many as they can get through in that 5 minutes. Okay? And a couple of our presenters have actually said they will be able to stay this evening and answer your questions. So if your question didn't get answered, they're going to be at the tables at the back, and you can have an opportunity to sit down with them and have a conversation to covering the questions that you didn't get answered, okay? So hopefully that makes sure all of you get your questions answered. So we're going to start with, I guess, City Council is to my left. Community Development, if you want to go ahead and get started.
I thought we were going to start with them.
Okay, Michael, do you want to go ahead
I
and
will
get
be
started?
happy to go first.
All right, let's go ahead and get
So I
started.
got a lot of questions, and I tried to group them as best as I can. If I don't answer the question in detail to your satisfaction in detail, please come and I'll stay later. But I got two about HOAs and compliance with HOA requirements and how working with HOAs. And the rules with HOAs are private rules. We do not get involved with HOA rules. So if an HOA says your mailbox has to be such and such, that's on between you and the HOA. If they say you can't plant something in your front yard, that's between you and the HOA. Now some HOA rules do have like you can't have a certain size shed, or if you're going to build a brand new house on a lot that might be an infill lot in that subdivision, they might have different rules for like setbacks, and you definitely want to make sure you do not confuse those rules with our rules. A lot of times those rules, like the city-county setback rules, you might be able to meet those and the HOA rules. It might not be a problem. And yes, there might be a conflict. Like they might say like you can be 20 feet from the right-of-way and the zoning rule is 25 feet. And so there's that 5-foot little gap there between the two rules, and really you need to meet our rules first if there is that conflict. Otherwise you're going to be building something that violates an ordinance. So that's the best that I can say there. In terms of capacity, does the planner working with Durham HOAs? The best I could say is that our engagement strategies, especially when we started work on developing the new comprehensive plan back in 2018 and 19, was to really focus on equitable engagement. And that means focusing our very limited resources on communities and populations that have been continuing and historically been marginalized and disinvested. Now there's lots of communities in Durham that have the time, money, and energy to engage, and they don't need our help as much, and they don't need our resources as much. So we focus our very limited resources on those who have been historically been marginalized and try to get them involved as much as possible. So I don't know if that answers the HOA question, but a lot of HOAs are suburban. They tend, not always. I'm not gonna generalize one way or the other, but we probably don't have the resources to work with every HOA. But we do encourage HOAs and members within the community in general to stay involved, be part of, get the listserv notices, read through them, see what interests you, and there's going to be loads of opportunity to be involved as an HOA representative or just just a citizen of Durham. Okay. What changes do you expect in the new UDO? That's a very good question. One of the big things that we're going to try to focus on is making development regulations are very technical. And we can't get around a lot of that at times, but what we can do is just try to make the language a little plainer language, a little bit easier to make it a little bit easier to understand while still making the rules pretty definitive and less loosey-goosey, for lack of a better term. And I know I'm being recorded and I just said loosey-goosey. That's fantastic. There's a big interest in our department and the city as a whole to make rules and documents that we put out more accessible to everybody in Durham. And technical documents are not always accessible. There's jargon, there's technical language that only certain professionals would understand. Unified Development Ordinance, a lot of it is geared towards engineers and landscape architects, and that's okay, but some of it is also should be accessible to every person, everyday person in the city and county. So that's probably one of our goals, to be able to make it accessible while still making it legally sound, that you can't like work your way around that language just because we're making it plainer language. We will probably be developing new types of zoning districts and new regulations with those zoning districts. What that looks like, I don't know. So that's it. We're such at the early stages of it. Those are probably the two biggest topics that I could think of right now with the UDO.
Mike, we have time for one more
One
question.
more. Yes. How does customer service department measure success, and what is one area for improvement that you are focused on? So I can measure success for the employees that I have. You respond in a timely way, and your responses are correct. But in a general sense, what we need to make sure is that people walk away with the information that they need. Now, it doesn't mean that they walk away happy. When I interview people for a position, one of the questions is, in retail, the mantra is usually customer is always right. But that's not the way that's not always the way it's going to work when you walk in and talk to the planning department or building inspections or a host of different departments. But we want to be able to help you and get to a point where you at least understand what the rules are, maybe come up with some options for you. Might not be the number one option, but give you some avenues for trying to get to where you want to go. Sometimes it's just not doable, but at least we want to give you that information so you can make an educated decision of how you can proceed with your project.
Thank you, Michael, and City County Planning.
Thank you.
Okay, Reginald from Community Development.
All right. So what I'm going to try to do, first of all, it's all great questions, and I'm just going to go through them as fast as I can. What are some practical ways for individuals and nonprofits to assist with the homeless population in Durham? The basic answer is time, talent, and treasure. So support the local nonprofits by volunteering and giving money, also if you're affiliated with organizations that can support in times of organizing volunteers or organizing funding, like for example my church or your church or synagogue or mosque, whatever, and support. Then also you can volunteer for the point in time count in January. That's what this community development department organizes, and that's where we actually go out and count in January the sheltered and unsheltered persons who are homeless. How did you come up with the goal of housing 1,700 unhoused people? Well, what we did, and remember this is like 2018, the bond referendum, and the plan was passed in 2019. We went back we organized it in 2018, and we looked at the past history of what was going on in the homeless system and what would enable us to set a goal based upon what we had encountered and also what would allow us to stretch. And so that's where the goal came, and also what resources we were projected to have over the next course of 5 years. Do you have a program that helps rehabilitate homeless people, especially those living in shelters, in places to put them in jobs so that they can transition into homeless of their own? So first, the answer is yes, we do fund those types of programs. DSS has those. The Housing Authority is working on some of those types of programs, and some of our nonprofits. Just want everyone to appreciate how the challenge it is to work with persons who are homeless, because there's more than just going the issue with them, the challenge with them is not having a roof over their head. Usually there's something else going on, and that's the reason one of the things we fund is case managers to help work with nonprofits to help people with their individual caseloads. So sometimes there's soft skills that need to be worked on, and and one of the things with landlords is that they're concerned about housing people who are homeless or formerly homeless, but something might happen to their apartment. Or there are other things that are involved with homeless other than just the roof. Is there a URL where the average citizen can see the progress update on Forever Home Durham project? ForeverHomeDurham.com. ForeverHomeDurham.com. What is the homeless population in the city? What percentage will be helped with the $160 million project? So the answer to the question about unsheltered is probably about 160. Unsheltered, that's people that's literally unsheltered. Then you have those persons who are sheltered, and it's probably about another 200, 250 that are sheltered, but they are considered homeless. One of the things that's important that for you to know is that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, that's the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the U.S. Department of Education all have different definitions of homeless. So the money follows the definition. So for example, there are cases where the DPS, Durham Public Schools, will put out information about who's homeless. We don't count kids that are sleeping with somebody else as homeless. You know, they're sleeping in, that's not homeless because they had a place for us, they had a place to sleep last night, which goes to the definition of homeless that we have to implement with our funds. So just keep that in mind, that all these funding sources, and this is your federal government. But just keep that in mind. What percentage will be helped with the 160 million? That's a difficult question to answer because it's fluid. The homeless population is fluid. What we're trying to do is build, strengthen our system, which is all of the players, because the way HUD looks at it is we're all one. And that's one of the things I have to talk to our members of our continuum of care about. It's not, your big eyes and little U's. It's us, because when we are rated, when we are funded, we're funded as one, not 50 different organizations.
Reginald, we have time for one more question.
Okay. Who manages the $10 million in ARPA funds for the Fayetteville Street corridor? That's the city manager's office. It's not us.
Thank you, Community Development.
All right.
All right, McKenzie, Jim, and Celeste from my area, County Engineering and Environmental Services.
Sure, so I'll read out the questions since there's three of us. The first one is Celeste. What does fee simple mean?
Okay, so I was mentioning what the county owns in fee simple, and as a conservation easement, fee simple is when you own the land outright. So Durham County owns, I think, 1,200 plus acres of land that we own for conservation. The other number was in conservation easements, and so that is a farmer or a landowner, and they have sold the development rights to the county, and we hold that conservation easement. It's protected land that the county has a legal interest in, but it's not fee.
And the second one is, what is NRCS?
Oh, NRCS is the Natural Resource Conservation Service. It's a division of the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Okay. Jim, what will happen with the DSS building across the street from here?
That's something that we are asking the commissioners to give a direction on. The building itself is in really bad shape. It would need to be completely torn down to the steel as this building was and rebuilt or as a renovation. Currently, though, we are in the process of removing some asbestos. All the floor tile in the building is asbestos laden. And we can't really, General Services doesn't like going in there and removing furniture because of the floor tiles are loose and it can cause asbestos to be in the air. So we're going through a mitigation cycle right now to get the building free of asbestos. Once that's done, we still don't know the ultimate disposition of the building. We would like to keep it at least a few floors for expansion of county facilities, because we're already running out of space in our existing buildings. So that's probably where we stand as the project management or the engineering department. We'd like to at least have a couple of floors available for expansion. There's talk about doing a public-private partnership with a developer that would redo the building and perhaps lease us a couple of floors and have the rest of it available for others. The building can't be torn down. There was some talk about replacing it with a park, but that's a historic building as far as the county's concerned, so we can't tear it down or change the facade very much. So other than that, I mean, we don't know. We have our preferences for what would happen, but it's really up to the commissioners, and it has not been put to them officially yet to give them some options. So we're still working on that. But it's a complicated issue.
Okay, this question is for me. I love this question. What can homeowners do to help with stormwater and erosion control? It's a great question. For stormwater, I would say on your own home lot, if you happen to have a stream on your property, make sure that stream is clean and it's not blocked by debris. You may have buffers if you have a stream, so make sure those buffers, you're not tearing down trees, make sure those are really in a natural state. There are a lot of small things that homeowners can do for stormwater. You can do like a rain barrel on your house, so you can capture your gutters. If right now maybe they run over your driveway or over your grass, you can capture your gutters in a rain barrel and then reuse some of that water maybe for gardening or irrigation. There are also things like pervious pavers. The county doesn't currently have a program for a cost share for that, but pervious pavers are special pavers that help infiltrate the water a little more than a typical driveway. For erosion control, the biggest thing that helps our department is when we get calls that people drove by. When I asked at the beginning who has seen an active construction site, I'm sure many of you have also seen something that didn't look quite right to you. Even if you don't know what it looks like, you'll know. We get calls about mud in the street. If you see a stream that is red, if you see silt fence that maybe is knocked over, things like that. Like I said, we have a lot of sites and not very many inspectors. So a lot of our enforcement starts with a call from a citizen.
We have time for about one more question, McKenzie.
Okay. Looks like Jim is the winner on this. Will 500 East Main have any commercial usage on the lower level like 300?
Yes, I forgot to mention that. There, I can't say what, but there are retail spaces on the ground level, mainly underneath the, what was the term I used? The full rate housing that surrounds the parking garage. The first level will have retail space and restaurants.
All right. Okay, I'll make sure I get all the city and county right. You say it so many times, you get mixed up, right? So, city community development, city county planning, and county engineering environmental services. Thank you so much.